rather easy at this moment in time for any businesses that isn't doing rather well to point to Brexit. But let me just give you the facts. This week we've had economic growth accelerating. We've had real wages accelerating. We've had RELX, the Anglo-Dutch Business Information Company, revise its structure to be headquartered in the UK. So actually, I've got positive news on the economy this week. Inflation has come down to 2.5%. Some people said it would hit 4%. Look, I don't doubt that some of the uncertainty around these negotiations will have an impact on business. That's why we're putting all our energy into getting the good deal that we want with our EU friends and partners, at the same time making sure we manage the risks if it doesn't happen. All I'm just gently saying is that it's rather easy for a business to blame Brexit and the politicians rather than to take responsibility for their own situation.
Now, ever since referendum day, there's been a phrase doing the rounds. It is despite Brexit. Any vaguely optimistic or good piece of news is portrayed by virtually all the media as being despite Brexit. And I suppose, to some extent, we ought to really thank our former Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, for this, who, of course, told us that Brexit would lead immediately to hundreds of thousands of jobs being lost, a new dark age, emergency budgets. We kind of been prepared to think that everything about Brexit, certainly in economic terms, was going to be negative, and that really has taken a grip. Interestingly, Nigel Evans MP asked Liam Fox, the International Trade Secretary, about this in the House of Commons back in July 2017.
I think the potential for trade with Commonwealth countries is very exciting, growing economies, strong economies. But every time I open a newspaper or listen to the radio or TV, the story is done very negatively. It's going to be impossible for us to do these trade deals. Does he feel that it's both wrong and undermines the work that he's doing?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it does appear that some elements of our media would rather see Britain fail than see Brexit succeed. I cannot recall a single time in recent times when I have seen good economic news that the BBC didn't describe as despite Brexit.
Absolutely. No, Liam Fox, you're right. And here we are. You know, August 2016. Retail sales rose in July despite Brexit slump fears, report finds BBC. November 2016, UK construction rises despite Brexit vote, BBC. Lloyds Bank hails resilient economy despite Brexit uncertainty, even the Telegraph taking this narrative, August 2018. Goldman Sachs to fill new London HQ despite Brexit fears, Telegraph, summer 18. Luton van plant to increase production despite Brexit fears, Channel 4 News, August 2018, and it goes on and on and on. I'm amazed we haven't had tomorrow. It's going to be a sunny, lovely day, despite Brexit. This is the negativity that seems to have gripped the entire media. I don't know about you folks, I'm pretty hacked off with it. I'm absolutely done with it. Can't we please look at things a little bit more objectively now? You know, perhaps I've got this completely wrong. So you tell me, am I wrong? Because I am bored of the constant negativity surrounding Brexit. If you think I'm completely wrong, we should be scared witless about Brexit, then please call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you're with me and agree that this phrase, despite Brexit, is driving you to want to sort of smash the radio or the television. And if that's how you feel, please text to 84850. Or maybe you're somebody who used to feel very down and depressed about Brexit, who's now feeling a bit more optimistic. I hope there's someone out there who feels like that. Maybe even Theresa May might call in, you never know. You can tweet your views using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course you can watch us on Facebook. I'm here for once back in my London studio. Despite Brexit, I'm bored with it. It's negative. Can we please change the record? Let's go to Dan, a new caller from Hertfordshire. Dan, good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
So, now, Dan, I'm clearly getting very worked up over this because every time I hear the phrase, it drives me nuts. How do you feel about it?
Well, I disagree with you, and I can get right wound up by the fantasy of the Brexiteers thinking that everything is going to be rosy. This country is an importing nation. In fact, we import 40% of our food. All of our imports are costing us a great deal more money, and it's these facts which are affecting retailers that are selling many imported products, Poundland, John Lewis, no doubt. Our own business, my own personal experience, is a food import company supplying retail. Thanks to the collapse in the pound, we have made several £million lower gross profit, which means we are contributing much lower sums of taxes
But Dan,
to the exchequer.
Dan, hang on a second. The pound started falling in 2010. The pound fell significantly more from 2010 right up to kind of February 2016, when nobody thought Brexit was even a possibility. That was when the pound really fell. What's happened since has been small by comparison.
Well, no, Nigel.
Yes, Dan. Yes.
After the financial crash, the pound did come as low against the euro as down to about 104.
Yeah.
But last August, it was 105. Today it's 112. The fact is, in December 2015, the pound was worth €1.40. Today it's worth €1.12. Now, we're importing a great deal from these countries, and all these imports are costing us more money. So for Dominic Raab to say that companies shouldn't blame this on the uncertainty about Brexit, well, it's the uncertainty that's squashing the pound.
Well,
right? So he is wrong.
But Dan,
and you are wrong.
But Dan, I've been in business since 1982, right? I've lived through periods.
Yeah.
I remember when the pound...
Didn't you make a lot of money short-selling the pound on the night of the referendum?
Oh, well, if you believe crackpot conspiracy theory, yes, Dan. But, I remember in 1983... just after that period, when the pound against the dollar fell to 103. I've seen it since that time go back to nearly 2 against the dollar, back to 170, and then the big fall down to where we are. And by the way, Dan, you might remember that just 11 weeks ago, the pound was higher than it was on the morning of the Brexit referendum. So the pound goes up and down in all sorts of circumstances. What Dominic Raab is saying, what I'm saying is that there is a constant negative argument put around Brexit, and it's not doing us any good in terms of our business confidence.
Since then. Hasn't been anywhere near that since then. The fact is the pound has been depressed, and it's depressed because of uncertainty, because we appear not to be making enough progress in agreeing the deal.
Right. Is there anything,
why.
Dan? Is there anything good about Brexit, Dan? Is there anything good about Brexit at all? Is there anything good about Brexit?
I think it's a mistake.
All right, OK, fine. Dan is feeling deeply miserable, and we had our slight argument there over currencies. I repeat the point, the pound fell a lot more in the years before Brexit was even a possibility than it has since. Let's go to David in New York, another new caller to this show. David, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. Now, tell me, are you one of those beset with a negative agenda?
I really don't know what that question means, Nigel.
Well, what I'm saying, David, is that we keep getting quite good economic stories about inflation. Inflation is running at 2.5%, not the 4% that everybody said that it would. Unemployment at 40-year lows. There are some quite good stories out there, and yet every story about the economy doing reasonably or doing well is put after the phrase "despite Brexit," and I'm getting a bit bored. I'm getting a bit bored of the negativity.
Right. Well, to be honest, the reason for my call is quite different. But I'll take your point that I can imagine how you would be frustrated by that.
Yeah.
First of all, if to address the economic situation,
I think business confidence, David, is damaged by it. But anyway, far away. What's the point you wanted to make?
Well, let me just help you by addressing what you just said. First of all, I don't think the economy is going to suffer hugely like a lot of people do. And by the way, I didn't vote to leave. I did vote to remain.
Uh-huh.
I don't think that is central to my thinking. I think that there are pros and cons with any kind of trade deal. And I think at the end of the day, if we leave without a deal, I don't think that that's going to be a good thing straight away. But I think that overall, Britain's very strong. We've traded independently for many years before the EU, so I don't see it all as a completely negative thing in terms of just the economy. I think that more importantly is things like human rights. I think more importantly is our relationship with other member states. However, that said, there's obviously other issues that other countries have with membership of the EU, so who knows what the long-term future may bring. What I've phoned for, really, is you quoted Mr. Rubb this morning saying that he believes that his company suffered because of uncertainty. And I listened to his interview this morning.
He's saying that
That's
John
not what he
Lewis
said, Nigel.
John Lewis have said that, you know, the uncertainty surrounding Brexit is one of the reasons their profits are down. And what Rob is saying is it's all a bit too easy to say that.
Well, my understanding of what he said was that the current profit downturn has to do with the value of the pound, and I think I didn't hear quite clearly what your last caller said, but I believe he said something along those lines.
Well, the last caller, David, was an importer. And for an importer, a falling pound means things go up. For an exporter, of course, it's great news, which is why Britain's exports last year were at a record level ever. Oh, no, David, your view on this is balanced and nuanced. You think there'll be winners and losers. I accept that. I thank you for your call. Your message is coming in. Susie says, the sooner we're out, the better. I'm sure we will cope and make Britain great again. Phil thinks the negativity is there because it is true. Andrew says, not bored. It's the right people that are informed and prepared for the consequences for our economy, our living standards, our healthcare, driving and travel arrangements abroad. Our politicians have a responsibility to tell people. Andrew, how on earth did we ever survive before Mr. Juncker? It's quite beyond me. Well, I want to be positive and upbeat and tell you this. Every single economic forecast I've ever heard in my whole life since I first started working back in 1982, nearly every one of them, whether they're positive or negative, proves to be wrong. Let's be positive. We're going to get back our democracy. We're going to get back our independence. We're going to be a proper country again. Gosh, I'll drink to that. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 6:15 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz. Well, Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab has been really busy today, not only saying when John Lewis complained about falling profits that it could be Brexit, that it's too easy to blame Brexit for everything, and I agree, I'm sick of this phrase, despite Brexit, good things are happening, but also, and I was very curious when Dominic Raab took that job as Brexit Secretary, because, you know, he'd been a strong campaigner for the Leave side, and he accepted that job in the wake of the Chequers deal, which nearly everyone I know on the Leave side thought was a terrible sellout. But today, he said something in the House of Commons about the agreed £39 billion divorce bill that I thought made a lot of sense.
We'd be haggling for every penny and every pound, and it would not reflect anywhere near the amount in the financial settlement, and nor would it be paid the same way. And remember, because this is important for the EU, and it's always important to understand the perspective of the EU, it's not just the amount of money, it's the rate at which it's paid that matters too.
So he's making it very clear, we'll haggle all the way. If we don't get the right deal, we ain't paying the money. Good, good, good. That's what I want to hear. Now, back to the negativity surrounding Brexit. The whole narrative. Just over an hour ago, Hilary Benn, chair of the Brexit Select Committee and Labour MP for Leeds Central, was speaking to LBC's Eddie Mair about what a no-deal Brexit scenario would look like.
For far too long, the government has said no deal is better than a bad deal. But what is now crystal clear is that no deal is the worst possible deal. I can't imagine any deal that would be worse than the kind of things we've heard about.
There we are. So no deal is a disaster. It's a catastrophe. And just to add to the gloom, as the Cabinet met today, guess who rattled up Downing Street to go and cheer them all up? Yeah, Mark Carney. That's right, the Governor of the Bank of England, the man who didn't even try to be neutral during or after the Brexit referendum, and whose term has been extended by the Chancellor, Philip Hammond. And yeah, he was there today, the Bank of England Governor, to say that a no deal, he's warned of potentially dire economic consequences for a no-deal Brexit. So it's going to be a complete catastrophe. It's going to be an absolute disaster. The air of total negativity seems to permeate the entire debate without any positive views ever getting through. I'm getting pretty sick of it, as is Mary in London. She says, I'm sick and tired of all the talk of Brexit. All the companies are trying to put the fear of God into us. Mary, they are. Fed up is an understatement, Nigel. Every time there's a problem, we just know Brexit's going to get the blame. But I'm also sick and tired of media articles that try to make Brexit look like such a bad thing at every given opportunity. I've had enough of it, to be honest, says Vince in Exeter. I've just heard the newest bit of scaremongering regarding us on UK driving licences not being valid in the EU. Simple way around that threat: return the favour for EU licences. The foreign lorry drivers coming into the UK would soon make sure that's put right. Alistair, I came back very late last night through the shuttle onto the M20. I think it's now about 12,000 lorries every day with European number plates drive up through Kent full of goods produced in Europe and around the rest of the world for sale in this country. there's going to be a deal on driving licences, folks. Don't listen to all the negativity. There is simply too much of it. Let's go to Linda, who's calling from Heston. Linda, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. It's lovely to speak to you again.
Good to have you on again, Linda. So, I just think there's too much negativity.
Oh, so do I, Nigel. It drives me nuts. I mean, this morning I was watching the TV and I was half expecting them to blame Brexit on Hurricane Florence, actually.
Yeah, well...
Well, any minute now they're going to say, it's due to Brexit.
I've no doubt there's a global warming link to Brexit. I've no doubt at all, Linda, at some point in the future we will hear that. Do you ever hear anything positive being said about Brexit, Linda?
No, it drives me mad because, I mean, there is so much positive things about Brexit and it's as if it's like a dripping tap. I feel that from the word go, the Remainers have tried to just pour in more and more negativity every day. It's a bit like the Chinese water torture. Every bit of negativity is just coming from the BBC, I hate to say. But it's just dreadful. It drives me absolutely mad. And I know my family feels the same way because we're all very ardent Brexiteers. We just can't wait to get out. We feel that the longer that they push this can along the road, it's giving them more and more time to pour in more and more negativity.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Linda, you're on LBC. Here is your chance. Say something positive about Brexit.
I think it's a wonderful chance for us to get back our borders and to make a real launch again into the world where we should be, not cowtailing behind on the edge of Europe as they think we are. We're not a tiny little island. We are a great nation.
We are a great country. Are we going to make Britain great again, Linda?
Yes, that's it. That's
good.
What I want to
Thank
do.
you. Thank you. Yeah, they are positive, upbeat. Gosh, there is somebody else out there apart from me. Nigel, the only reason that J. Lewis is not making as much money is because they're paying Elton John around £5 million for a Christmas advert, says Kathy in Southampton. Kathy, I hope that's right, because I've just read it out on air. I might be in trouble if it's not. Hey, let's go to Teddington and speak to Paul. Paul, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. I'm just bored with hearing this, unemployment's down again despite Brexit, new investment into Britain despite... It's this constant framing of the debate, Paul, in a negative term. It's getting me down.
Well, you're going to be down for a while. We're part of Europe. If you just look at the map, it's quite patently obvious.
I thought we were an island.
Yeah, but look at the continent. So we're continental Europe.
Right.
So the facts are there, Nigel.
So does that mean, Paul...
The financial houses...
So does that mean, Paul...
deserting our shores...
Are they? Are they?
You worked in finance. You should know, Nigel.
Yeah, and I've just seen the massive investment. The massive investment in the city. Deutsche Bank have just taken massive office space just up off London Wall, which they've taken for the next 20... the investment of some of these foreign companies in financial services in London is huge, Paul.
Yes, Nigel, but look at Dublin, look at Frankfurt. They're rubbing their hands together at the moment.
I have to say, Dublin...
They're actually doing better. So, JP Morgan. For goodness sake, Nigel, I thought you were in finance.
Dublin.
You don't have a clue, do you?
Dublin has 12.5% corporation tax. It's a very good reason to move your HQ to Dublin, isn't it?
And so why didn't they move there before Brexit was rumoured?
Right. So, Paul, what you're saying is that the country is going to sort of go into sort of endless decline because we're not governed by Mr Juncker, yeah?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's a lost opportunity. Our biggest trading partners are the European Union. And actually the largest trading partner is Ireland for the UK. So we're cutting our nose off to spite our face, which seems ridiculous.
So, Paul, let me just put these two quick points to you, right? Number one, only 12% of the UK economy is exports to the EU. Important though that is, 88% of it is not. Number two, of the whole world's economy, only 15% of it is in the Eurozone. 85% of it is outside the Eurozone. Looking ahead to the next 20 years, which of those two do you think is the most important market for us, Europe or the rest of the world?
Nigel, I shall get a fact checker from Donald Trump if I were you, because your facts are just patently wrong.
Do you know what? I've been using those facts day after day after day, year after year after year. You're the first person that's questioned them on me. If you can prove I'm wrong, ring back, Paul. I'll put you through ahead of every other single caller. I promise you. I hate the phrase I get by text, crash out of the EU. We simply leave under WTO, taking back full control and save 39 billion. Andy and Walton on Monets. And again, you're right. It isn't just despite Brexit. Crash out. Absolutely. Falling over the edge of a cliff. You have to hand it to the Alistair Campbells and others. The Remainers have been brilliant at creating a negative narrative that very few seem to want to counter. Nigel, Brexit would be great with Boris in charge, says Chris. Well, it would certainly be entertaining. Of that, there's no doubt. Richard is a new caller from Norwich. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening.
Are you one of those that feels very negative about Brexit, or are there things we should look forward to?
Well, I voted out in 1975, but as I was at the end of my working life, I didn't vote in the 2016 referendum, so I didn't see why I should partake of a decision I didn't have to pay for.
Right.
But after being threatened, bullied and lied to for the last 2 years by the ongoing fear campaign, if they do manage to swindle us into another referendum, I blooming well will.
Right, so you really...
I'm absolutely disgusted.
Yeah, and it is this sort of... It is a kind of bullying, Richard, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I spent my working life between the army and the police force standing up to bullies, and I don't see any reason why I shouldn't do it for myself.
Yeah, they're bullying us, they're threatening us, they're trying to... And it's fear. They use fear, economic fear. They use it the whole time. Richard, I think... there are a lot of people out there like you, respectable, decent people, who actually are becoming quite bloody-minded because of the way this whole thing is being presented.
Well, I wouldn't go too strong on the respectable and decent, but certainly I don't like being threatened.
OK, very good, Richard. Thank you for the call. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 6:30 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz. We're doing OK as a country, despite Brexit, because that's what every news report says, and I've just about had enough of it. Tell me whether I'm right or whether I am wrong. Now, some comments today by the Dalai Lama, of all people, in Malmo in Sweden, are going to be conveniently ignored by virtually all of Europe's politicians. The 1989 Nobel Peace Prize winner said, talking about migrants coming to Europe across the Mediterranean by boat, he said this: receive them, help them, educate them, but ultimately they should develop their own country. He added, I think Europe belongs to the Europeans. Now, it's a very interesting comment. So what he's saying is, if people are in trouble, you should help them. But actually, once they've been helped, they need to go back to the countries they've come from to help build those countries. And do you know something? If you look at the people that come, nearly all of them are young men deserting the weaker people in the countries from which they come. And his point about them going back and rebuilding those countries is a very strong one. But to say that I think Europe belongs to the Europeans is not something that any other political leader is going to pick up or comment on at all. But it is a very interesting intervention from a fascinating man. I met him 8 years ago. I've said this before, I'll say it again. He is, I think, of all the people I've met in my life, just about the most impressive. There is some extraordinary sense, aura of calm and certitude about this guy. I thought he was a really, really good person. But aren't they very interesting comments? Something we'll debate again at some point in the future. It always struck me, all these young men deserting their countries. Who's left to build those communities and to build those countries? Back to the negativity. Kevin on Facebook says, to the Remainers, we are not stopping trade with the EU. Jay says, Brexit is the best thing in my lifetime. Martin says, deal or WTO deal, EU trading is going to continue. Of course it is, Martin. All those lorries I saw on the shuttle last night coming into Folkestone, they're going to keep coming. Of course they are. David said, I voted to leave. I just wish they would get on with it. Well, that is a very popular view, David, I'm sure. Moniash is a caller from Southall. Good evening to you.
Hello, Nigel. How are you? First of all, may I just share your comments with the Dalai Lama? I met him again 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I share your comments. He's a wonderful person, and I achieved a lot from my comments from him.
Yes.
And I've got a huge lot of respect for you, for your intelligence and your upbringing and where you studied. But I don't share your politics, unfortunately, and this is where we differ.
Well, that's all right. Hey, that's what democracy is all about. That's fine, you know. Yeah. So tell me where I'm wrong then. Because I mean, frankly, for every single piece of good news to be framed with this narrative, despite Brexit, is really getting me down a bit.
Right, where do you want me to start? Bad news or the good news?
Well, give us the good news. Come on.
Well, there was no good news. It was all bad news.
Oh dear. Now that does sound like a Remainer. It really does.
I'm not a Remainer. I'm not a Mona. I'm not a Rona. I'm none of the above. Yeah.
All right.
I'm just a normal, neutral person, and I respect all politicians because I believe they add value to what we do in a democracy. However, when you fail, I hope you don't take it the wrong way if I criticize you and tell you where you've gone wrong. Hopefully you can learn from it.
Well, I'm all ears, absolutely.
Okay. On this occasion, what evaluation did you do on Brexit? When you instigated it and promoted Brexit, did you do a cost-benefit analysis? Did you work out whether the costs are, the benefits are, and whether to weigh up the pros and cons? And if you can't be bothered to do that and get an evaluation report together and get it passed by someone, how on earth can you expect a government to pass that trust on to the public and have a referendum and let the public know?
Okay. On the Manish, on the cost-benefit analysis, my friend Lord Pearson of Rannoch, for nearly 20 consecutive years, got up in the House of Commons and asked the government would they conduct a cost-benefit analysis of EU membership, and never once did they take him up on the offer. Now, he himself did, through a think tank, conduct a cost-benefit analysis that concluded that actually the cost of excessive regulations coming from the European Union was costing something like 4% of our economy every year. Now, other economists, of course, can disagree with that. And the problem with economics is people will always disagree. But let me tell you the one cost-benefit analysis I did do personally.
Okay.
And I couldn't come up with a figure, because I couldn't work out what freedom was worth.
Right. So if you can't come up with a figure, how do you expect the general
public to do so?
Well, you tell me.
Come on. You tell me. What is freedom worth?
No, you are wrong. You're wrong. I'm sorry. I'm frankly sorry to say that. If you can't come up with a figure and you're making a huge decision,
I can't monetize independence. I can't monetize democracy.
If you can't monetize it, then why do you pass the buck on to the public and say, let's have a referendum?
Are you telling me that everything of value in our lives should be measured in money?
No, I'm saying that if you voted for a government to be in a policy to do something, we voted for them to do their job properly. And if they can't do their job properly and they just pass it on to a referendum and say, oh, I can't do that, I can be bothered, yeah? If I'm wrong, I'm going to suffer, so let the public deal with it. That's wrong. That's ultimately wrong. And that's what the government has done. And I'm sorry to say this, I totally disagree with that. And you've passed it with wrong information. Most of the public didn't even have a clue what the costs are or even the benefits are, and they're expected to vote on that.
Well, I think,
that's ridiculous. I'm sorry to say this.
But maybe it's a subjective. Maybe it's a subjective. I don't want to be governed by Mr. Juncker and the gang in Brussels. I think we should govern our own country, make our own laws, control our own borders, and this. This is about something far more important than money.
Okay.
It's about identity.
Nigel, if you don't mind, can I just digress a little bit? Let me give you a little example, if you can give me the latitude of time. Imagine you're getting a divorce.
Well, as you're so polite, I couldn't possibly refuse. So go on.
Thank you very much. Imagine you're getting a divorce and you want to divorce your wife, and you suddenly ask your children, "Oh, Mum's not doing too well these days, yeah, so we divorce her." And the children, you have a vote. The children say vote. But the children don't know. They're going to lose their school fees, they're going to lose their school, they're going to lose everything. And they've got no idea what's coming around the corner. This is what the country has done to us with the divorce. Theresa May has put us in a position with David Cameron, whoever he is. I don't know where he's hiding now. He's under his blankets or something. He's never to be seen.
He's got some shed in the garden that cost about 40 grand, doesn't he, I think, you know.
But this is where I'm standing from. And you see my point of view, and you feel any affiliation to where I'm coming from and where most public will come from.
No, I don't. Manish, with respect, I think you're putting too much monetary value into this debate. And when it comes to money, listen, Brexit could be the biggest thing for our economy ever. Maybe it won't be. I don't know. But it's about getting independence. Thank you for your call. I've no doubt we will speak again. Dear Nigel, I've just enjoyed 3 pints in Whitstable. Despite Brexit, says Tony. I wish I was with you. I love Whitstable. It's a nice little town. Greg is calling from Edinburgh. Greg, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Farage. I'm interested that the Dalai Lama has such certitude, because it seems to match the Remainers' certitude that Britain is forever, if we remain, going to be unaffected by the economic cycles that hit all the time. It would appear that, that John Lewis's profits are going to keep rising forever. There's never going to be unemployment anymore. We're going to enter some sort of nirvana if to go back to the
Greg,
the
I think you need to understand. You need to understand, Greg, and because I was with Mr. Juncker yesterday, you need to understand that the European Union is actually mankind's greatest invention so far since we first appeared on the earth, and that they will nurture us from cradle to grave. Nothing could ever go wrong if we're governed by foreign bureaucrats, Greg.
Well, it seems we're leaving the Garden of Eden.
Well, we must be mad then, mustn't we, Greg?
Absolutely,
Greg. This is what gets me. They present the European Union as if it's because of the European Union we have prosperity and peace and happiness and everything is going wonderfully. And you actually look around at what, for example, the euro has done to youth unemployment in the south of Europe. You look at the resentments that have been caused, the growth of genuine extremism because of their crazy ideas about the free movement of people. And the other thing, Greg, that gets me, the Remainers say, but you vote to leave. That's uncertainty. Staying is certainty. But we don't know. But it's not certainty, is it? We don't know what their policies will be in 5 years' time.
To a certain extent, it's uncertainty on both sides, but you're absolutely right. The thing is, you can't put an economic price on the independence of the UK, and that's it.
Well, I really struggled to get that point through to Monish earlier. Greg, thank you for that point. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Leeds and speak to Sean, a new caller to this show. Good evening, Sean.
Good evening, sir. I've got to tell you, I'm more than enthusiastic about Brexit, and I believe it's prosperous all the way for this country.
Do you? Tell us, Sean, as almost nobody in the country has ever said this since the referendum, tell us why.
Well, simply, if we compare trade, for instance, the EU does more trade here, so even on tit-for-tat tariffs, again, we make a profit if that comes to it, otherwise we'll get a free trade deal. We're saving £14 billion. We can actually reduce tariffs on goods from outside the EU coming into this country.
So what you don't mean food could be cheaper, do you, Sean?
Oh, yes, by far.
Goodness me.
We apply tariffs to a lot of countries, and especially third world producers, again, which impact on shoppers here. And again, so the monetary savings. Let's bear in mind also that the fact is that the EU aren't going to turn away trade from here, not at all. And also, I've definitely not given them a goodwill payment for the facility of actually accessing their markets. I mean, Canada didn't pay all that money to access it either, did they?
Canada's free trade deal involves no payment of goods. It involves no jurisdiction of the ECJ in Luxembourg. It's kind of a sensible deal. Sean, tell me, where did you sort of learn all these facts and figures and develop this positive framework?
Well, I actually read up on it even before the actual referendum. It's something I've actually thought was beneficial to this country over a long period of time. And also, you also mentioned, so I think financially it could be beneficial for us. But also with uncertainty, they're right in sort of saying there'll be uncertainty on both sides. But at least with jurisdiction in this country, you make your own decisions.
Well, do you know what? If I was told once by Peter Shaw, the former Labour cabinet minister, that think of the global economy like a storm-tossed Atlantic, the point about being independent is you're in charge of a tiller and not somebody else. Sean, new caller, great call, positive, please call again. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz. Well, the negativity around Brexit is also leading to some very negative and nasty personal behaviour. I don't know whether you saw that Jacob Rees-Mogg, coming out of his house in London yesterday morning with 4 of his young children, abused by somebody describing themselves as a class warrior. And not just Rees-Mogg abused, but actually the children being talked to and told, the Tuesday this happened, your daddy is a horrible person, etc. This is just unacceptable behaviour. Now, Mogg has told LBC it's nothing to get excited about, but I do think these personal attacks on political figures, well, sticks and stones may break my bones. It's part of the job. It goes with the territory. You know, people call out across the street or whatever. I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. If you put yourself up for public office, you should expect that to be part of your life. But when it comes to your children being directly attacked or subjected to this kind of behaviour, I think the whole thing is completely and utterly unacceptable. In this case, all right, it's happened once. But if it does happen again, can the police please do something? I tell you because, and the reason I say this, and there is a personal angle on this, when my children were with me and we were attacked, not by one person, but by 80 people, and violence was used, and a car was written off, and children had to run and hide. And do you know how many prosecutions there were from the police? 0. And I do think we need to make sure that the children and families of those in public office and public life are properly protected in this country. Otherwise, you're going to find an awful lot of good people just won't go into politics, and that would be dreadful in my view. Now, back to negativity. And here we are. You see, now Jay says on Twitter, the delusion of some Brexit callers on LBC is quite something. One caller says Brexit is the best thing to happen. That's Nigel and his Brexit Alice in Wonderland friends and followers. Jay, at least we're being positive. What we're sick of is endless negativity. And I rather agree with this text that John has sent. He said, well, think about this. Where do the Remainers put their faces after the 29th of March 2019 next year when nothing happens? No one will ever listen to them again. Big risk if you rely on the media for a living. John, it'll be like the millennium bug. Do you remember? I mean, we were going to wake up. It was going to be a disaster. Systems would have crashed and gone down everywhere, and everything pretty much carried on as normal. And we were told, don't forget, that a Brexit vote would lead to a disaster. And because that hasn't happened, now they say, but Brexit hasn't happened yet. And they never, ever stop with this negativity. I'm bored with it. Had enough of it. Mark is calling from Yarmouth. Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Thanks for taking my call.
Not one bit.
I'm going to come in and defend what you're saying here, because basically what you've got is this negativity around this John Lewis thing, business and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as I said to the guy who took my call, basically when I don't remember anybody saying anything when these big high street brands or chains were going down the pan. Was it Woolworths and a few others that were disappearing off the high street?
Mark, the high street.
Before the referendum.
Yeah, the high street's having a terrible time. You're right. Woolworths, names that we've known all of our lives.
Nigel.
Well, it's also a social shift, isn't it? A big change to online shopping
Yeah, but it's also overpricing.
Yeah.
I've been in John Lewis. It's quite expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and if there's a bit of an unemployment issue in the area, they're not going to go there, are they?
No. Mark, I agree with that. The high street was having a tough time.
But you can't keep blaming... what it is, Nigel, is when in 1992 we also had the financial crash, which was Black Wednesday. Do you remember that?
That was when we left thank goodness we left the exchange rate mechanism.
Tried to tie the pound.
They wanted us to... Our politicians wanted us to join the euro.
Yeah.
And as a precursor to that, they pegged sterling effectively against the Deutsche Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was a kind of precursor, wasn't it, of going into the euro?
Absolutely.
Right. And it cost this country dearly. Now, these Remainers, they either don't know that or they don't want to know it.
Mark, they were wrong about the exchange rate mechanism. They were wrong about joining the euro, and they're wrong about this.
They don't want to know, Nigel. They're scared of probably... I'm not saying this is absolutely 100%, but they seem scared to me that maybe, just maybe, we might be right. That... coming out of the EU was a good decision, because they're not going to accept the result either way. But how can you then... we've not come out yet, Nigel. They're going on about this doom and gloom. We've not come out yet. Nothing has been agreed. We haven't come out of the EU yet. It's on the 19th.
29th of March, hopefully when we're going to. Mark, it's going to be okay. I'm going to move on, Mark. Loads of callers. Here we go. Joe in Birmingham. I bet you won't read this out, but here goes anyway. You do not have to worry about a negative price for freedom, as you got enough money, ironically, some of it via your salary from the EU. Yeah, but I've just voted, Joe, to get rid of that salary. So what is the point you're actually making? The working, struggling classes, they've got to work. Joe, one of the whole points about Brexit is to give the little man and woman a better break against a kind of politics and a kind of economy where the big corporates dominated everything. And already, because EU migration numbers are a little lower than they were, average wages are going up, Joe. That, I think, is a good thing, not a bad thing. Now, if I ran a big company, I would think wages rising was a bad thing, but I don't. I've got time for one last caller on this subject of the constant negativity, the framing of all good news as despite Brexit, because it's driving me bonkers. I'm going to go to Launceston in Cornwall and speak to Roselda, a new caller to this show. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, Nigel. Well, yes, all these negative comments, but to me they're negative because it's just confirming Remainers' forecast for scaremongering. It's Project Fear, and the good economic news is confirming that it was Project Fear.
Yes, I mean, you know, the Chancellor of the Exchequer was very clear that the effect of a Brexit vote would be dramatic on the economy, and it simply hasn't been the case, Roselda, has it?
No. But I also, can I get this in a minute?
Go on.
I did read a report by a German commentator, and he was saying that actually if Britain would only realise it, we're in a really, really strong position because German businesses and industries are so concerned about a no deal or a bad deal for Britain because of their huge surplus trade with us.
Roselda, that's absolutely right. And do you know something? I have, without doubt, detected a change of tone. Monsieur Barnier shook my hand yesterday morning, beaming and friendly, asked how my summer had been. Even Juncker was quite positive and quite friendly when he spoke, and the reason is, Roselda, those big German companies particularly are putting massive pressure on. They don't want their goods to be tariffed in the UK. We're such a good market for them, they actually call us Treasure Island. So let's be positive about it all. Roselda, do you have... Do you find, Roselda, in Cornwall, do you find your friends that voted Remain, do you find they're still in a very negative mindset about Brexit?
No, a lot of them who have voted Remain are so fed up with how the EU are treating us that they are actually changing their minds.
Interesting. Roselda, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, all of you. Lots of calls, lots of messages, and Tina in St Albans actually sends me the message that I'm going to finish on because it perks me up, it cheers me. She says, Brexit is about more than money, and that's right. What price freedom, folks? We're going to be a democratic, self-governing, independent nation. What's not to like? You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show. I'll be back here on Sunday morning at 10. Tonight at 10, it's Tom Swarbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
I was just about to break into Land of Hope and Glory then, but I resisted the temptation. Thank you very much, Nigel. Now on the LBC News Hour, we'll be finding out what the Russian suspects in the Skripal poisoning case have been saying. I think it's really charming that they're such fans of English steeples. We've the latest on those no-deal papers the government have been publishing. Aung San Suu Kyi has been defending the jailing of Burmese journalists, like we're surprised anymore by her behaviour. The London homicide told